Hello from the land of TV. This is King Kool. Welcome to my top 10 best and worst films of 2023. It's an enormous relief to only be doing one of these this year, but let's get going. I guess now the runner-up t-shirt is going to be a t-shirt that I bought at GameStop for a game I do not play. Because last year it was the Overwatch t-shirt I have for the Summer League. I do not play Overwatch. I have TF2. It's like, hey, can we stop it? Overwatch, Overwatch, Overwatch. Buys a single black coffee and leaves. That's me for Overwatch. Or it's like, we have it at home, and it's TF2. Again, a Nicolas Cage movie that I like the first 2/3 of, but doesn't quite make the finish line and collapses about that point. I actually am going to talk about specifically what goes down in this, because otherwise I can't make a salient point about this, so that'll be saved for the end of the video. I really, really hate to agree with all the internet poop heads out there, but this is the new bottom for the MCU. A character we've barely seen hide nor hair from in 5 years, and frankly, didn't really notice her absence. A new character from a Disney Plus show that I've heard the show is good, but I don't really see it here at least. And a new character who I legit have no idea where she's from. These three characters are introduced in a scene that makes all three of them look like absolute hopeless incompetence as they continue to sort of fumble around and fight a brand new villain who is less interesting than Ronan the Warrior from 10 years ago. Then there's also the scene. Everyone knows what you're talking about if you've seen the movie. This is not one of these things where no one shall be seated during the whatever scene. It's like, no, this doesn't make it worth it. My friend said it was his favorite part of the thing. I wanted to walk out of the lobby to buy a large popcorn just to throw it at the screen. It's up there with like the No Doubt musical number that they did in the original one that I pointed out in that video, and it's like this, but like 4 times worse. But you're just sitting there stunned. You're like, what are you even attempting, movie? I hated it. So apparently between movies, Captain Marvel just flew to where the super intelligent was and just blew her up because apparently Annette Bening asked for too much money, so whatever. She's not coming back. She ain't gonna be in Rush Hour 3. And this obviously caused like the Kree to all hate her, and a lot of them are now scattered in forces, and they're all redirecting their hate towards her and everything else. So maybe a lesson that this thing can bring into the real world is that just going somewhere and blowing up your enemies doesn't solve anything! Even the post-credit scene, for which I am the easiest to please in these things, just show me anything I haven't seen before, I'm like, cool, whatever. You know, and I used to joke about obscure characters, and they started popping up in Guardians. I'm like, alright, cool. But this one, it's introducing something that we know they're going to try to do because we know all the companies that they bought and the things they're going to try to fold back in. It's basically the same thing as the one from Suicide Squad, the original Suicide Squad in 2015, 16, I don't remember which year, 16, because it was the same year as Batman, where it's about them forming the Justice League, and we know they're trying to do that because that's all they've been trying to do, and that's one of the things that they just never seem to get was like, you need to use these things to introduce new elements. And this is a new element to this universe, but we just know it's coming, so you can't surprise us anymore with this. There's a show coming out called Echo, and I legit thought that was the African-American hero's name in this was Echo, but no, it's totally not. That's just, this movie just left absolutely no imprint on me, except a gentle negative one for the scene. The Marvels just strikes me as a really pointless thing to attempt, because I don't know who 2 of these characters are, and the third one I don't care about. So they needed to give this thing a sense of purpose, even if it was like a girl power kind of thing, and even if it was, you know, as the kids say, cringe, at least that would be an attitude to bring to the party. That's fine, you know, it doesn't have to be for me. But this thing just sort of just like, well, we got to do this at some point, so it just feels so obligatory, which the films have never felt like this before. There has not yet been an MCU movie on a worst list, but if they're going to look like this, I just can't keep making excuses for it. This is the last time I will be merciful. Look, Wish is just friggin' weird. So, like, there's like a love song between like the main guy and the main gal, which is reasonable, but it's apparently sort of like rewritten between her and a different other character. It was going to be those two, because it's very heavily romantic, and I'm not certain that's what that was meant to be. And also, like, there's lots of like Disney adjacent style things that have been sort of like legally distincted to themselves in this thing, and maybe what it is since they know they're losing Steamboat Willie. As of this year, maybe like if we make a legally distinct version, we can just reset the clock on that and get another 90 years out of these other characters. Maybe that's what they were thinking. And so yeah, maybe the, you know, powerful wizard who is in this movie takes dreams from people, and they no longer can have their dream, but he has it, and sort of collects them and sits on them in this giant sort of library of dreams. And then maybe when he starts using them improperly to gain his own power. Are you guys seeing what I'm seeing here? Am I crazy? Someone thought they were being cute, I think, trying to get this one under the radar at the mouse, but surely they saw it coming, and they don't care, because I think they are legitimately more powerful than the Wizard in this movie. They can just do whatever. The first mainline entry in the Fast series that I just really have no defense for. I've seen 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, and Hobbs and Shaw. Hobbs and Shaw made the worst list that year. That was really just inexcusable. Jason Momoa is now in here. He's playing basically like a Joker with a beard character. Another incredibly powerful hacker, which is different from the powerful hacker from 7, who was Ramses, who then had Cypher from 8, and now we have another one. I think they might be facing the same problem that James Bond had with the ever-increasing power level of its opponents. That just has now gotten completely out of hand. There's simply nowhere to go. They literally went to space last time, and now it's like, what, are they going to go back in time? Maybe it's like the Vegeta turn for Cypher, who is still the most boring character in the whole series, and the most boring thing that Charlize Theron has ever done. Like, look, get that money, sister, but man, this performances just are not good. There's no character there. And so, yeah, like, this one sort of runs its course, but at the very, very end-ish, when it's talking about all the things that Dominic Toretto has lost over the years, and I think there's all these things you've done, but there's one thing you shouldn't have done. You shouldn't have left me with my car. I'm not made of stone, guys. That works on me. It's like hearing Cap say, I can do this all day. Can't wait for the sequel where Vin Diesel will bring peace to the Middle East with his car. Then again, like in the promotional material, at some point when this thing didn't do so well, I think Vin Diesel shot his mouth off and said that maybe Jason Momoa was a reason this movie didn't do good. And I'm like, that is entirely classless. But, I mean, not that Jason Momoa is the thing that's worked in that movie. I think his performance is terrible. I think he's better in Aquaman, but not like a whole lot. So there was a scene in Aquaman 2 where his baby pees up in his face. He said, yeah, that was based on a real thing that happened with my son. Yes, Jason, it's called a diaper. We invented them about 25 years ago. Maybe you weren't around at that point, but that's why we stopped keeping babies in bird cages lined with newspaper. Every idiot with a penis thinks their child was the first one to do all sorts of things, from digesting food, to sticking a Lego stud up his nose, to aspirating out his own vomit, and then rolling out and tumbling out a screen window into the street. I like this movie. I do not love it. I'm glad that they pushed all of the joke characters to the side, except to introduce a couple other new ones, which really aren't that interesting, and then right at the end, they threaten to bring them all back. It's like, God, this is getting too crowded. Like at the end, when a certain thing happens, and they just milk it for so long, when you're like, no, if you heard what they were saying, you knew exactly what went down. It's like, oh, okay, this is what's going down, but they just milk it for so long, and the soundtrack just buzzes. And I'm going to go out and say this, Miles' parents suck. Miles' parents are both jerks, and I don't want to see them. I want Miles to swing free and do whatever he wants and go live with his uncle. And yes, I know what I'm saying when I say that. So this movie is basically The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent with a little bit of The Lost City mixed into it. It currently has a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, this movie is bad, and it doesn't really have that much good in it, and what's good doesn't really elevate the material. But this is why you should be wary about 0% of Rotten Tomatoes. It's not that it's a horrible movie, it's just that nobody liked the movie. So there's really no reason to see it, because you probably will not like the movie, but the movie's not that bad. It is a 0 because there is just sort of nothing to really recommend about it. It just has very few virtues and a lot of like, well, this just kind of stinks. There's some things I kind of liked about it, and some things are reasonably executed well, and John Cena is always fun, and so is, Alison Brie, isn't it? Yeah, and she's fun too, so, you know, they're doing fine. Buckle up. Okay, so this movie is about the parallel of Job, where instead of being like the normal world, there still is Christianity and things like this, so they're very unspecific about it. It's about a super powerful being that can sort of shift people to parallel dimensions and, give them good lives or bad lives through those powers. A stand-in for essentially the devil, in a weird way. He's played by Neil McDonough, and I've had some bad, I've said he's not been good in certain things before, like this, whatever. I didn't actually know that he was a Christian, though he's been participating in more things like this. And he apparently got fired from some show because he wouldn't be intimate with a cast member. And I'm like, good for you. I'm fine with that. Like, might limit your acting opportunities, but it's also like, yes, like, if you don't want to do it, you don't want to do it. Like, you can't be convinced out of that. But, so as it is, Neil MacDonald's portrayal of the devil is now my second favorite version of the devil in any media. He doesn't quite beat Peter Stormare in Constantine, which is obviously a very small part, whatever, but I love that one. He is just so darn, like, compelling and, like, weirdly charming and also sincerely threatening. It is the reason to see this movie, because the rest of the movie is boring as hell. I mean, obviously, like, I'm a non-believer. I think I would rather see the Christian media do things like this and do just oddball, weird stuff. Even, like, the musical they made recently, Journey to Bethlehem, is at least coming at it from a different angle than these God's Not Dead and some other things. I even liked War Room. I thought War Room was coming at it from a nice angle. The problem was I saw this the same day as Dream Scenario, and when a friend was like, hey, what'd you see? I literally could not remember the shift. So, as much as it's a good performance, it's surrounded in a movie that's not really worth it. I still would say give it a watch. And again, I want to encourage Christian media to actually be art and not just be propaganda. Maybe there was a difficult discussion I had with someone at the end of the year where they were talking about, like, oh, they were praying that they would get the chance to visit some friends. And one of the things that I saw in War Room was, you don't pray for your own all right? You pray for strength for what the Lord has put in front of you in order to endure this, because there's obviously a reason. You pray for other people. If you want other people to have stuff, that's what you pray for. You don't pray for a bike, all right? That's not how it works. If you want someone else to have something, or you want someone else's burdens to be lifted, like their sickness or anything, that's when you pray. You don't pray so you get to do something, all right? That's not how that works, and that's not how it ever works. How am I the one who knows this and you evidently don't? And now, on to the good list. Why belabor this? Either of these movies could easily be the best movie of the year on anyone's list, and no eyes would swivel on it. Both of these are probably about the best thing that anyone ever made this year, and that includes any of your babies, alright? This was the first thing post-COVID that really grabbed everyone's attention and really got people interested in movies again. Warner Brothers could have had both of them, but then decided to screw Christopher Nolan over, so he took that to Universal, wherever he took Oppenheimer. But it might have actually worked out better for both of them, because then they were able to sort of do this sort of surprising bit of counter-programming. It's probably the best sort of thing to be released in two very different pieces of the same kind of media, since Doom Eternal and Animal Crossing came out in March 2020. I did, in fact, do the Barbenheimer thing. That's because I usually try to see more than one movie if I'm down there anyway, so no big difference for me. If you were to do that, I hope you went and saw Barbie first, because if you saw Oppenheimer first, and then Barbie, even Barbie will probably feel either very slight, or you'll just be very tired and be like, why am I doing this? So I believe that is the proper order. I'm not going to give either one of them the number one spot, because they both have kind of minor flaws that kind of keep them off that lauded pedestal. Oppenheimer's problem comes early in a movie that's over 3 hours long. It's not really a big deal. You swiftly forget it. And Barbie's comes towards the end. I won't say exactly what goes down. It's just a little too long, which is ironic that of those two movies, which one's going to be the one that's too long? Not Oppenheimer, although you could probably cut a big chunk of the start of it and you'd be okay. Like, there was probably some meat to cut off of Oppenheimer, but it's good meat, you know? So I feel like rewarding either one of these movies is kind of the same way like that Yahtzee didn't give Baldur's Gate 3 any awards at his annual thing, because, you know, it is more about, it's the same thing what I did with Endgame and Infinity War, where it's like, look, these are my favorites, but these are not interesting choices. So the two movies that everyone talked about all year are not interesting choices, so I am putting them on the list. But I'm putting them at number 10 just to be like, look, we know, but who cares? I'm just going to throw them at the bottom. I will say I definitely did not foresee Everything Everywhere All at Once winning the friggin' Oscar. I think I had it filmed, but I think the Oscar came out after it came out, so I just looked like a dope. But nevertheless, I was like, okay, like, sure, I'm glad that they finally picked a good movie. That's pretty cool. And best of all the Looney fans get to go out and say, no, you have to pick which one is better. The culture war is real, and it's important. And the even bigger weirdos who don't like Barbie for whatever reason get to go, no, these movies are not equal. This movie hates men. You know how bad you have to be that I just legitimately get to make fun of these actual ridiculous nerds? And I have, like, absolutely no leg to stand on for most of this stuff. When they act like this, I'm like, oh yeah, no, you guys are being idiots. This movie doesn't hate anybody. It just makes fun of the dumbest men imaginable. And it even gives them an out for this if they finally can just sort of relax and shed all this performative masculinity and just be whoever you want to be. This movie has enormous sympathy for these fools, which is something that I do not have anymore. And I'm not even a woman. This isn't like Ghostbusters 2016 where it's like, oh, these internet comments don't make me feel good. It's just a really bad way to, like, deal with the fact that, like, the trailer didn't do good and they just add these things in later. It's like, wow, this sucks. This was like, they knew exactly what was going to happen when they made this, because this whole architecture and ecosystem exists already of just anything that makes a woman feel good, I guess, is this thing to feed into the BS machine to be like, no, there's something you need to be mad about. The filmmakers anticipated exactly what you were going to do, and you still fell for it! Some people put out their list, like every year, this is every single thing that they saw. And some people have a list where Oppenheimer is there and Barbie is conspicuously absent. And I don't know what they're trying to prove with that, except maybe that they just don't appreciate art. I don't know. I remember during his presidential campaign, John McCain talked about, someone asked him, what's the last book you read? And he sheepishly had to confess it was Twilight. And I believe someone else asked, what was the last thing your wife told you not to do? And she said, don't read Twilight. But the point was, that book captured the imagination of the American people, and he was like, let's see what the big deal is. Was, at the time, how old was he at the time? Like 79? 79-year-old John McCain was like, let's see what the big deal is. And I'm sure he didn't like it or appreciate it, but it's like, this is captured the American consciousness. Let's see what the big deal is. We're gonna make a Barbenheimer movie, apparently, which will have absolutely none of the impact of either one of these movies, but might have the same impact as Sharknado 7. Okay, this is a classic 10th best list for me, but the 10 spot is occupied at the moment, so we're gonna put this at 9 instead. As it is, Hypnotic is from a previous Best of the Year winner, Robert Rodriguez. Ben Affleck plays a detective whose daughter was sadly abducted a few years ago. In pursuit of a different crime, he finds a picture of her, and then he encounters this mysterious man who has unexplained superpowers, and things get a little weird. I'm not really sure if I can even explain what exactly goes down in this movie, and I've said that a couple times in the past, but it's no surprise that Robert Rodriguez, a filmmaker's filmmaker, as I've said, takes this idea and runs with it about as far as I think you could reasonably do. It is also fun seeing Ben Affleck do something silly again, although I liked The Last Duel where he was being funny, but that was also drama. Like, I don't think people give Ben Affleck enough credit. It's very easy to turn him into a punchline, but it's also easy to forget that he's good. The fact that the Razzies nominated him for The Last Duel, I didn't mention this in that video, but I'm like, that is a crock in two halves, all right? Jeez. Your mileage may vary, but I thought this movie was quite a bit of fun. It might not even be good in a normal sense, but even if it is a bad idea, nobody takes a bad idea and does it with more gusto than Robert Rodriguez. This is one of those movies that probably would have made the list in a different year, but again, I missed a lot of this year because I got sick. But nevertheless, like, I never saw the original Dungeons & Dragons movie back in 2001. It has a pretty bad reputation. But this is at least made with some love for the original thing. It has some respect for the way a Dungeons & Dragons campaign actually goes. There are a couple of little story cul-de-sacs that this thing goes to sort of for no purpose, but what else can you expect when it's trying to be like a Dungeons & Dragons session where sometimes you're like, oh, we just have a session where we're stuck at a bar and then someone's trying to win a game of darts or something. It's like, so that I think is in the spirit of it, whether or not it's intentional, whether or not it's just to give a cameo to one particular actor. I won't say what's going down. Another great villain performance from Hugh Grant, who had a great turn this year as well in Operation Fortune, which is probably the most I've liked a Guy Ritchie movie. I think that's a Guy Ritchie movie anyway, I don't actually remember. Check that in the edit. Me, because I'm the only one who does these things. See, not a movie I have enormous affection for, but once they decided to make the main character a bard, I was pretty much on board. I'm like, all right, let's do this. And also the way other nerd ephemera was treated this year, I should probably just be happy this is as good as it is. And mostly understated, but still brutal movie about an elderly baker who has escaped his life of crime, but is dragged right back into it by his estranged son and even more estranged granddaughter, where they must re-enter this dark world with the cargo that they have hidden in a loaf of bread. A lightly budgeted affair that turns up the brutality without making it fanciful or weird or really even fun. Perlman gets tossed around quite a bit in this movie. He's not like Steven Seagal where the guys just never hit him. But he also softens a bit through the movie as he gets to know this granddaughter of his, even though she never speaks. He's hard on the outside, not too hard, and has a soft center. Just like good bread. Look, I'm not really a dog person. I'm more into cats. My YouTube feed is just filled with cats. If I'm in a bad mood, I'll pull up a certain video of cats purring or cats making funny noises or rolling around. My new workplace has a lot more dog visitors than my old one did, so it is kind of fun to see a dog come in and be like, ruff, ruff, ruff. It's like, hey. So, you know, that's kind of cool. I'm beginning to appreciate it, though I don't think I would ever be a dog owner. This is about a very little pupper boy who gets abandoned very far from his home and has to team up with a much more streetwise, lifelong stray to get back to his horrible, abusive owner. We don't deserve dogs. Strays could have gone wrong at any point, but it is also shockingly well cast. Will Ferrell plays the main character dog, and has anyone ever been better at being optimistic and stupid than Will Ferrell? Jamie Foxx plays the affirmed stray that befriends him, and it's really good to have him back. We forget how funny and talented he is, too. Did you see his Trump impression he was doing? I forget when he was doing this. Might have been 2022 or something, but it's really friggin' funny. Randall Park and Ilsa Fisher play the other two protagonists as a giant Great Dane and the most beautiful Australian sheepdog to ever be put onto film. Certainly a dog suitable to be voiced by Ilsa Fisher, let's just say. And furthermore, it seems to be a movie that understands dogs. There's a point in the movie where a fireworks display goes off and they have no idea what's going on and they freak out. Anybody who even knows a dog knows how much they would hate that. Which is why I hate when people just set off fireworks randomly at any point. Oh, it's July 4th. It's my birthday. It's your birthday. The Pats won. The Pats lost. The Pats exist. I don't know. There are some mean bits to this movie, but this movie is a lot sillier than it is cruel. And furthermore, the cruelty is mostly reserved for one character who really, really deserves it. And he ain't a dog. Let's belabor this one even less than with Barbie and Oppenheimer. I am glad that we are reaching a conclusion to the series, though, however, that has persisted for 25 years. And I'm glad they were honest enough to put part 1 in the title in the trailers, which, I don't know, another movie, maybe one called Dune, didn't do. You should have heard me at the premiere of Dune. I didn't talk about Dune at all, but as a premiere of Dune, it goes, Dune, part 1, and then you hear one voice in the audience go, what? I am certainly anticipating this final part of a 20-plus year-long series with greater enthusiasm than Fast 11. This makes 3 in a row for making the best list for Mission Impossible, but they're just darn fine action movies. Anyway, blah, 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 it's good. They've all been good for the most part. 2, I mean, the worst one was what, 2? And, like, that's not even, like, bad, really. It's John Woo. He apparently had a movie this year. I didn't catch that one. It was Violent Night. It was that one with, is it Violent Night or is it... What's the one? There was one last year with what's-his-face, Harbor as Santa, which was pretty good. It didn't make my top 10. And there was one this year with Joel Kinnaman, you know, the guy who's just absolutely never impressed me, as, it was like some sort of soldier or something. I didn't catch that one. Again, it was one of the ones in September, October, which I missed because I had COVID, so... Crud, maybe that's on some. I could stream that. I'm not changing the list now, but... With Cruise's involvement, I might then question the anti-technology themes to this one that weren't really part of the other series. But at least this movie is sensibly anti-AI, which is something Gareth Edwards couldn't do. We haven't seen him in 10 years since Rogue One or whenever the hell that movie came out. And he comes out with this piddly little thing about, oh, maybe AI are the good guys. It's like, oh my god, is this the year to do this? The WGA should kick his ass out. He was on the set of that movie, and he's like, I'm not going to tell people if they're robots or if they're humans, so I get more naturalistic performances. It's like, dog, if you did that to me, I would deliver every line, hello, human. I am doing this now. It's like, just tell him. Or just lie to them. Say, you're definitely a human, then add the CGI whatever to be like, oh yeah. I was like, well, that's what I wanted you to do. Just lie to them. You're allowed to lie to them if you're the director. But don't do this other, I'm going to leave it on you. I'm not going to tell you. Tee-hee-hee. Like, that is so unnecessary. Did y'all see that thing with the AI thing for the video game things? And it's like, how did friggin' SAG-AFTRA do this? Where we're basically going to take people who are in our union and make it that they don't have jobs anymore. What the hell is going on over there? Yet another trilogy of which every part of it has made it to my top 10 list. Mostly through the fact that, hey, I happened to do my first top 10 list in 2014. That's when Guardians came out. Guardians 3 is excellent. It is a fine story that we would expect from Gunn at this point. It has surprising emotional depth for the scenes that feature exclusively CGI characters, and it is a worthy conclusion to the saga. A space saga that has a great ending for a trilogy. Gosh, couldn't we get more of those in 2019? It's a good wrap-up, but it's a shame that Gunn won't be working with them in the future for reasons that we know about. They seem to be a lot more literally gun-shy before they literally fire people in this time and age, where they wait for, a trial to finish and get a guilty verdict before basically saying, okay, Ant-Man 3 is just a completely pointless cul-de-sac now, so okay, whatever. The Bill Murray stuff in Ant-Man 3 is so bad. It's not like with Thor 3, where there's, okay, we have Jeff Goldblum playing a Jeff Goldblum-esque character, and it's kind of works for this sort of thing. It's like, no, he just finally was able to convince someone, or someone was able to convince him to wander on the set for 2 days and not give two craps in this pointless scene. Okay, take the money, Bill, but don't act like you're adding anything to this. I guess since he couldn't do the Wes Anderson movie this year, because again, he also got COVID. I don't, make the money. It don't matter. Nothing matters. Good for James Gunn for becoming DC's Kevin Feige. He is going to completely fail in that role. Not because he's not smart or he's not a good filmmaker. It's because the thing that made him uniquely qualified to make the Suicide Squad movie, the thing talking about offbeat, weird-ass superheroes that don't generally exist in the DC in starring roles, makes him completely unfit to helm the ship for Superman and Batman. It's not that I wouldn't want some new interpretation of these characters. God knows I would love that. But James Gunn is just as wrong to start this stuff out on as Zack Snyder was, just in the completely wrong direction. Maybe he can rise above it, but after the last 10 years, and with Warner Brothers continuing to make high-profile junk, I just don't have any faith. He either won't be able to do it because he's not the right guy for it, or he won't be able to do it because of the environment that they're in. Either way, I think it's going to go badly. Please allow me this diversion. Sometimes I have something on my list, even very high on the list, that I just don't have that much to say about. But I have something to say about surrounding issues. This year there was a movie about Flamin' Hot Cheetos and how a janitor had invented them at Frito-Lay. But evidently that isn't true. It turns out they were on the market a year before he had said he invented them on his stories. So this big thing on Rolling Stone or The Atlantic, one of these things. One of the websites you can't read the article until you sign up or do something. It's not even when you have an ad blocker. It's like, oh, you can't read. It's like, cool. Forgive me for reading directly from my notes here. But the director, Eva Longoria, said, talking about the fact that whether this didn't actually even happen, which is pretty much verified fact at this point, she said, and I quote, "We've always been telling Richard Montañez's story, and we're telling his truth. We weren't making a movie about the history of the Flamin' Hot Cheeto. We're telling the story of Richard Montañez." Well, Ava, evidently, his truth doesn't line up with the truth, the actual truth, the real thing that apparently actually happened, the one we all have to deal with, and the only one that actually matters. And now there's this giant movie that is essentially a deception, and is not based on the truth. It's based on a lie. Look, when Weird Al made his movie and made it completely fictional and odd and weird, he did that on purpose. Nobody actually believes it because we know he's not dead. If there's anything I really hate in the modern world, it's the idea of a personal truth. Now, there can be things like that with things we don't know about, like with spirituality, or things we're just not certain about what went down, like when you just don't know who to believe in a sticky situation. And that stuff sucks, but I guess if you call that a personal truth, then whatever. But it really is just your story, whatever. And if they didn't use the word truth, maybe we wouldn't object to this so much. The directors also apparently said the heart and soul of the story is true. In the sense that, yes, this guy apparently did climb up the ranks from janitor to marketing lead or something. That part is true, but he didn't invent Flamin' Hot Cheetos. So why call the movie Flamin' Hot? Why center it around that? Why make that part of it untrue? The heart and soul of the story is true. That's screw you, frankly. We have so few stories about Latin Americans and non-whites and other things, that the ones that claim to be true should at least be true in a substantive way. We know there's a lot of flummery that goes around in these things, so they change this thing, they change that thing, but I don't think it's never been that much that they just changed literally the point of the story. It was like, hey, he did this, oh no, he didn't. Although apparently in Catch Me If You Can, apparently that entire thing is fake, which is no big surprise coming from a lifelong con artist, so I think that just, we only have ourselves to blame for that one. I want more stories about non-whites in the movies, and I want more women directors. I actually said this one to a coworker, a woman, and she sort of had a response where she's like, well, why? What difference would that make? Kind of put me on the back foot. But then I said, we won't know until we have it. As it is, the moment that she got that sort of power, she not only told a story that was not true and pretended to be true, but that she knew wasn't true. She is a deceiver, and I earnestly hope that she never gets so much as a sniff at the director's chair again. Look, this stuff didn't even come to a theater, so I don't even know why I'm bothering. I didn't see it, so who gives a crap? I really hate it when based on true story stuff gets stuff like this wrong. That can be crucial about the stuff. There was a movie I saw, 2015-16 or something, I won't say which one, but there's a really tragic second act downbeat that I was not able to find confirmation of on this man's Wikipedia page. And I am kind of like, did they just make this out of whole cloth or something? Like, it would be ghastly to make something like this up. So I do hope, I hope it didn't happen in the sense I hope that what happened to them didn't happen at all. But to add it like that would be just kind of senseless. Like a non-important detail that is fine to get wrong in these books, it was in Lion, where the main character, throughout his quest to look for Google to find his home village, he didn't have one girlfriend, he had a couple different ones he was sort of cycling through. That's not a crucial detail, that's no big deal. I'm always wary of based on true story movies for this reason. Let's see, I got a list here. Anna Anderson was not Anastasia. The killing documents were forgeries and should not have gone to air. Michael Oher was evidently the victim of his, I don't want to even say parents, but his conservators, I guess, because we thought it was an adoption, but it was a conservatorship. Exactly what happened to Brittany, and we're all on her side at this point. You can even say it about Sully, because the whole controversy at the end where they were trying to review to make certain he did everything right, there was a review, but it was not by people who were trying to stick it to him. And even in the movie, it's not really that bad. They're just like, well, we got to make certain of this. It was a much nicer process. But for you to have something equivalent in Flamin' Hot, it would be that Sully didn't even have an airplane. Oh yeah, I never saw this, but they say in A Beautiful Mind that John Nash never had concrete visual hallucinations. And also that at the end of the movie when it says that he starts taking his medicine, no, John Nash never resumed taking his antipsychotics. He just managed it like this. But even in 2001, you can't just tell people, hey, are you mentally ill? Stop taking your medicine. That would just be incredibly irresponsible, which is really weird that then that's the message in Matrix 4. In Matrix 4, the guy you see in the trailer, I'm spoiling this crap, who even gives a damn at this point, Neil Patrick Harris is like the bad guy, and he stands in for Thomas Anderson's psychiatrist and is giving him the blue pills to take him to suppress his oneness or whatever, and the way to get out of this is for him to stop taking it and be able to be free. And I'm like, for the queens of hidden messages and things like this, the Wachowskis, for the add this into the movie, it's like, how can this not be taken exactly as it's meant to be taken? What is going on here? Don't listen to evil healthcare professionals, and don't take your antipsychotic medicine. Are we sure Tom Cruise didn't make this one? So if anything in Air turns out to be a complete invention, I would not be the least bit surprised. You can kick it off the list and split Barbie and Oppenheimer into whatever order you want on the list and take this one off. It's the same thing that almost kept Trumbo off the list, where they had a factual error that was pretty galling in that movie, but I still enjoyed the rest of it, so it was on there with that reservation. As it stands now, Air is a very nicely crafted story about Nike's rise to power as they seek to get the greatest athlete the world has ever seen at that point. This turns marketing into an adventure. It turns the salesmen into fishermen who are trying to get that one big fish that will change the course of their lives, of the sport, of footwear. I don't know how much of this movie is true, but it is effective, it is sharply written, and it is very well performed. Best of all, that means that Ben Affleck gets to get in the best list twice. Swish. One of my friends sadly moved away this year, but he was back in town briefly, and he was interested in seeing the new Godzilla movie in IMAX, because we have an IMAX theater around here, and there weren't any where he was in. And I reached out and I said, hey, do you mind if I tag along? It was kind of the movie I probably wouldn't have bothered seeing unless I was going with a friend. So sadly, the movie wasn't in IMAX. I guess not at all. Maybe in some places, but not where I went anyway. Some other Joker was in there. Maybe it was Blue Beetle or something. Was still in IMAX. But it was on a nice big screen. And it also was really damn good. It's the story of post-World War II, but pre-Godzilla, clearly. Our hero is a man who would be despised in his home country at the time this movie takes place, but 70 years on, I think we can look at him with a bit more sympathy. But he's just one piece in this tapestry of broken pieces sewn together by fate and forced to face this enormous reckoning that they are facing. This could be the best prequel since Godfather 2? I don't know. I didn't like Godzilla King of the Monsters. I could have put it on my worst list that year. I'd have to look to see what I would have moved, but I really just did not like it at all. My friend who loves Godzilla did love it, and what's a Godzilla movie for except for Godzilla fans? So I relented. I was like, whatever. If it's good for Godzilla fans, then it's good for me. As it is, my friend really liked Godzilla -1, and so did I. This might be some sort of mainstreaming of the Godzilla, or maybe it's just really that damn good. But the ending is just a little much, so that's why it missed the top spot. Okay, John Wick, you win. I'm waving the handkerchief. This isn't a handkerchief, this is a paper towel. John Wick is just 2 hours and 40 minutes of just beautifully candied violence in every possible variety. It is mesmerizing. It expands the world even more. The bad guys are loathsome. The good guys are kind of also loathsome. They just hurt each other in every way you could think of. There's even a fat guy fight. And the makeup is quite convincing because I was like, oh, who's this fat guy? And it turns out it's not. It's Scott Adkins. And that's kind of a bummer. It's not really a fat guy. But Scott Adkins was having a great time doing this, and he can do kicks that I certainly couldn't do. It is just absolutely beautiful and thrilling. And crucially, in the entire 2 hour, 40-minute runtime, I never once looked at my phone or wondered when it was going to be over. I just didn't care. And that's why it is better than Barbie and Oppenheimer. And now, on to the bad list. Illumination is basically just like a giant assembly line for releasing cartoons at this point. I mean, I guess every business is. But they've released 2 movies this year, which is kind of shocking. Maybe they shored up a bit of release during the pandemic, but it's just as likely that they were not able to operate effectively during the pandemic and weren't able to get it up. Obviously, like Minions sat on the shelf for 2 years. I have no idea if any of these other things sat on the shelf. As it is, Migration coming out during the holiday season is pretty surprising. Because most of the other ones don't go out into that much competition unless they're just going to go out in the summer when kids are out of school and they'll see whatever because they're kids movies. Even here, it says here on my paper, The Grinch came out November 9th, which kind of meant it hung around for 2 months, and maybe some places hung on to it long enough for December to come around, and maybe sometimes it didn't. But so the real big surprise is that Migration is actually pretty damn good as far as these things go. It's not deep, it's not complicated, but it's just a simple story about a family of ducks that want to move from one place to another and wind up in the big city and getting in a big heap of trouble. It's actually, as far as kids movies go, it's pretty damn good. Same thing with Trolls 3, actually, which not only, reunites the members of NSYNC, because why the hell not at this point, and obviously the people who are old enough to feel that way about plasticky boy band music are now old enough to, have 10-year-olds. So I was like, all right. So the funny thing in Trolls 3 is they put the little trolls inside the little atomizers and they puff. They do the, I think they do it into the, to give themselves singing voices. I forget if they spray it on the body, but I think they might do to do the, to be able to sing. Otherwise they can't sing. At the end of it, when people are confronting the villains, they say, you steal talent from other people because you have no talent of your own. And as I say that, I'm thinking, this might be the best anti-AI movie out this year. So good job, Gareth Edwards, you loser. The trivia on IMDb was saying how, in the first 2 Trolls movies, there was a James Corbin character, and he's in the background, but isn't in it. And they editorialized, they said that, oh, maybe he didn't get in it because James Corbin's shrinking popularity. One of the new villains in this movie is voiced by Amy Schumer, who also isn't popular. I've given my support for her in the past, but it's also hey, we all are whatever we are, and if people are sick of her, I don't necessarily blame them. It's been quite a while. But I'm like, I don't think that's why. We're going to jump out of the frying pan and into a different frying pan that might be a little larger, might be a little smaller, but it's pretty much still a frying pan. So I don't get it. In fact, I do think that frying pan might be larger because James Corden doesn't make controversial jokes, does he? I'm not sure. He's just kind of a goof. I'm not even sure why people dislike him that much. Yeah, I thought it was great in Cats, but I also think Cats is great, so what the hell do I know? So yeah, Illumination can do good things when they feel the need. And that's what got Mario back on the list. I was merciful for a long time. I'm like, I don't want to put it on here. Everyone else seems to like it. And then Illumination was like, hey, look at this thing that's halfway decent. I'm like, cool. Where was this when Mario came out? Mario is an inestimably valuable video game icon. And yet when we bring all the stars in here, it's like, oh, Jack Black wants to sing. Seth Rogen wants to bring in the DK rap. Not the actual rap where they actually talk about coconut guns that fire in spurts, but just the backing track, the DK, Donkey Kong. Not the actual rap. You could have even just come up with a new one and even had it be like one with some actual flow that's not quite so stiff. Does this really resemble a Mario adventure in any way? Not in any shape. The start of this movie, Mario's worrying about disappointing his father. And it's like, you know, the Duck movie we just talked about didn't do that, and that's the one about an actual family. Well, this one is not about that. It's about the Mario brothers. There's a lot of sequences in the movie where they're in peril and they're worried about dying. And I'm like, gosh, I wonder if the Mushroom Kingdom has a response to that. Something you could eat, possibly in the shape of a green fungus that would stop that from happening and allow you to continue your adventure. There's this stupid training montage in the middle of it where Mario has to do all these hoops and stuff, and he never dies in it or whatever, because I guess they just catch him, even though that's up in the sky thing or whatever, and he keeps doing it wrong, keeps hitting whatever, and it plays what's it? I Need a Hero by Bonnie Tyler, I think is it? I don't know music. But the one from friggin' Shrek 2? And it's like, alright, we have all these needle drop moments that are so bad. In the opening, with the friggin' Ice Castle and the penguins and everything else, they play Battle Without Honor or Humanity. The one song that once you put it in, you're like, okay, we either are making a big joke about this, or we are not taking this seriously. Like, once you put that music in, it's like that you were simply entirely empty of ideas. Luigi deals with a bunch of ghosts and zombies in his Luigi Mansion style section in this castle, but doesn't really amount to anything. A trapped creature in a cage that is being lowered into lava cheers because of his inevitable doom. Donkey Kong says, now you die. And Cranky Kong is there for unexplored reasons. A blue turtle, I suppose, sacrifices himself while they're driving the thing and, turns into a blue shell and hits the lead car and destroys part of the Rainbow Road. And all these things are like, I get these are Mario references, but I'm like, are we doing this because you want to make references to Mario Kart as if that's something trivial, whatever? You didn't make a reference to Hotel Mario, as far as I know. Maybe they got one past me, and if they did, good for them. But, bloody, are we doing this because these are the only things that the celebs who wanted to do things in it did it? Or is it just the fact that the people who made this movie just don't understand how this could turn into an actual adventure? It reminds me of the Leonardo DiCaprio thing where he goes, that whole meme where he's looking at, hey, I understood that reference. And Chris Pratt's voice. Chris Pratt as Mario he's fine. He's just fine. I kind of want him to do, hello, here we go, ba-doo-ba-da-da, that whole thing. Maybe over an entire movie that would be ridiculous, unless it was just going to be that his character just talks gibberish like he does in Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, but also the people who made this movie never played that game. So, whatever. But also, the notion that that voice is just the voice they do in the commercial they play at the opening of the movie. That's a fine explanation. That's perfectly good. It gets at the thing. And it's also real people do not talk like very silly Italian stereotypes. So it's like, okay, that's fine. It's fine. This is not like the Lego movie where the people who made it obviously loved and understood what made people love Lego. It's 10 years old, so I'm going to go out and say, the fact that the villain in the Lego movie is the sort of person who would glue Lego together. I could not tell you the anger I felt in my heart when I'm like, that bastard. And I'm like, that's why the Lego movie rules. And the Mario movie was simply not made with that kind of care. It's just, here's the template for a 90-minute kids movie with Mario stuffed into it. And Mario is more important than that. Even Sonic got a better treatment than that, and that is crazy. And Sonic's the one with the sequel with the enormous sequence about the wedding of Sonic's adoptive parents' sister-in-law's wedding. There's this giant sequence in number 2 that goes for like 20 minutes about that barely involves Sonic, and I'm like, is this someone's cousin or something? Like, the actor is fine. I don't want to say anything bad about the actor who's doing that stuff, but I'm also like, come on, like, whoa, what are we doing here, man? Migration stands in stark contrast to the Mario movie as far as something that evidently was decent and was made without the interference of brands and other things as far as celebrities wanting to do a certain thing or do this or that. The fact that Illumination could make that with Mario and then instead made something terrible that I don't know how any of you fell for, that's why it's on the list. We are never going to see a good video game movie again, with one possible exception, with Metal Gear Solid from the passionate Jordan Vogt-Roberts. That's a possibility. But once this proved that this works and sells, they have no reason to ever try again. We are never going to get a good one after this. They're talking about making a Death Stranding movie. How the hell are you going to do that? The opening like thing to sum up what's happening to Death Stranding is 3 hours long, including a little bit of gameplay. But I'm like, how are you going to pack all that into one movie? Maybe it'll be a TV show or something. But I don't know if Norman Reedus does TV. That's not the point. Don't talk to me about The Last of Us, all right? Like, 1, it ain't a movie, it's a TV show. And 2, like, Naughty Dog did the heavy lifting for them. Can they make a good miniseries out of The Last of Us? I don't know. Can you make a gourmet meal out of 2 gourmet meals? I try to weigh, like, bigger studio stuff heavier against smaller independent stuff because of the opportunity cost and the scandalous waste of, like, enormous projects that cost hundreds of millions of dollars rather than something that costs a couple. But sometimes when you look at, like, an independent movie and you see just the waste that's gone into turning this poor stunt woman into an alien to tell a story that's so boring and lame and not funny, and you just start seeing that money pile up and you think of the independent drama that could have been produced in its place. It's not a large amount of waste, but I'm just thinking, what would I do with that money? You give me that, like, $2 million or whatever this one cost, and I would not make one $2 million movie. I'd probably make 10 movies for smaller than that. 8 of them would be bad, so I'm not deluded. The Hollywood system is going to make expensive garbage no matter what I say or do, but you think of this money that went towards all this stuff, and you think it could just be a nice little independent movie about a man who makes sandcastles or something. I don't know, anything. Jules is the story of an elderly recluse who discovers a UFO in his backyard with the alien to match. They name their alien Jules, and I legitimately forget why. They attempt to communicate with Jules, never really speaks in a normal way, but tries to communicate a way for them to repair the ship and get home, and it weirdly involves dead cats. The movie's trying to be sort of odd and quirky, but when it brings up the dead cat stuff, it is just legitimately grotesque. Again, I told you in the other thing, I'm a cat person, so, I'm also allergic to cats, so, I get to have none of the fun. Something kind of similar happened when I was watching Dream Scenario. People were kind of laughing, I think, just to laugh, in the sense that the movie's not laugh out loud funny, except for the one moment where you finally see the UFO and you see the aliens just sort of laying there, and it is very shocking. And that one moment is kind of like, all right, this is pretty good, but it doesn't ever live up to that kind of the sheer confusion and energy that this would produce. Or even not just like, this guy is just so stubborn, he's like, I'm going to continue on with my life, whatever, or do something, and like, that's not the point either, really. But like, that's the only like actual funny part of the movie. And again, like in Dream Scenario, there are people laughing at parts that I personally didn't think were necessarily supposed to be funny. With this one, the ones that they laugh at, other than the crash scene, is the hero's advancing dementia. And they're like, oh, beans don't go in the bathroom, lol. Did you not have like an elder relative that went through this or something? Were you born out of an egg? Or you never just like have something in your hand, forget it's there, and just put it somewhere and like, where the hell is this thing? Like, I do that like 6 times a day. But seriously, who's laughing at like advancing dementia and this guy slowly losing his grip? Maybe if Jules was like a character and was allowed to like speak or like really influence the story in any meaningful way other than removing herself from it, this could be interesting. I didn't like Asteroid City, but at least I remember everything that alien did. Remember Paul? Even Paul's more interesting than this alien, and Paul was basically just a stoner put in an alien body, and like, that was kind of the point. So I don't know if I've talked about this on the channel specifically, but I have a degree in theater direction. So I learned how about directing theater and about eliciting performances from actors, very touchy people. You know, and you can't just tell them what to do. You got to lead them down the path and try to convince them, or even just trick them to do what it is you want them to do or something. You know, it's all very interesting. But that's one of the reasons why I try to be very easy on actors, because I know a bad director can strand an actor and make them look like an idiot. I did it myself a couple times, you know. It's the same way like that Roger Ebert would always talk about the fact that you see a boom mic coming into shot from the top doesn't necessarily mean that the people made a mistake during the movie. It's the fact that the film is being projected at the wrong size or isn't being bound out properly. Because it's in the shot, but they thought it would be covered by the bindings in the thing. And so it's actually one of their problems. One of the things that you wouldn't necessarily know unless you were doing inside baseball stuff. So in 2023, there were 4 performances I saw from actors or actresses in mainstream Hollywood movies that I legitimately could not believe were that bad. As far as I'm aware, none of them are the representation of nepotism, in which case you're like, well, whatever, fine, this person sucks, no big deal. And it's not like it's whack movies like from Neil Breen or whatever. We're talking mainstream Hollywood things. I should point out, because I mentioned the Migration movie either, the 2 kids who play the kids in Migration are actually great. Like, legitimately really good cartoon kid voices for these kids. I hope they go far. They're both, I mean, maybe it's good direction or something and getting them out of whoever, but, like, they did really good jobs. So I give Migration a look. It's not close enough for best list, certainly, not this year. But, like, it's legit good. Probably the best thing Illumination has done that doesn't have Steve Carell in it. I'm not going to say who they are because I don't want to dunk on anybody, but 2 of them were parts that were recast from sequels, evidently to give much worse performances, which I really do not understand, and 2 of them were new parts. You could say, well, probably one of them is in Transformers 6, that's what I'm talking about right now, but the fact is, like, I'm kind of can insulate that a little bit, because there's also, one of the bad guys in this is Peter Dinklage, and Peter Dinklage seems to be really hit or miss in voice roles. There's a couple moments in this where I'm just like, what are we doing here? Like, what? Maybe he just doesn't like to do another takes or something. Maybe he just wasn't being directed right. There's the famous thing where he was in Destiny and then he get recast by Nolan North. It's like, yeah, those two guys don't do the same stuff. Doing voice acting is its own kind of skill, and maybe it's one that Peter Dinklage struggles at. I'm not really sure. He's not one of the 4, by the way. And also, I think he's great, so he can go ahead and phone it in for all I care. Maybe he just didn't care. I don't know. But yeah, Transformers 6 is the first of any of these Transformers movies where I just couldn't give a crap. I didn't see 3, by the way. 3 is meant to be the worst one. So that kid from In the Heights from the other year finds a Transformer, I guess because he was trying to steal it, because he was trying to save money for his younger kids, whatever, something or other. And it's like, okay, and it turns out to be a Transformer, and he gets wrapped up into this whole thing. Because we're back in like the 80s, 90s, I'm not really sure. The Maximals kind of reappear at a certain point, and considering that they're not in any of the movies, I don't know if they all die, or if they just screw off and like, later, we're going to be out in the jungle. None of the other movies, I think, take place in any jungle, so maybe that's part of it. The Maximals are in like 40 minutes of the movie. That's not what I'd call Maximals maximized. Here's a quote for your DVD cover if you want, if you're still making DVDs. Transformers 6 is the first one that really felt like the cartoons to me, in the sense that it had human characters and things that were so completely ancillary, and that just took all the air out of the room. It made everything so boring and insufferable. It doesn't really help that there's too many Transformers at this point. The fact that you have the Maximals and the normal ones popping up, there might just be too much going on at this point. But then the fact that one of them transforms into a suit for the human to wear, it's like, not this again. They did that with what's-her-face, the girl one in season 2 or 3 of the normal show, and it's just as bad there. I tolerated the Witwickies, I tolerated Marky Mark, and Kelsey Grammer's character, and Anthony Hopkins, and the John Turturro guy, and Megan Fox's 2 terrible performances. Remember when she was replaced by an actress who had no experience at all? Isn't that interesting? But after all this, I have finally just had enough. Autobots, roll out of my face! Look, I'm glad that we are actually making movies for older women and with older women in them. I didn't see Book Club 2 because I didn't see the first one. Or that other movie that Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin made this year. I don't remember what it's called. You know, good for them. Good to keep Jane Fonda off the weed. Or on the weed. I don't know. But 80 for Brady is just so broad and so lazy. Sally Field is one of the 4 protagonist in this movie, and she gets sort of thrown into this Hot Ones style wing eating contest thing, and she wins. It's like, okay, cool, but she doesn't win because there's a medicine that she takes that makes it very hard for her to taste, or that she's always loved spicy food even into her old age, or even that she discovered spicy food in her old age to try to, zest things up a little bit, or the fact that, like, she coated her entire esophagus in petroleum jelly. There is just no explanation for it. She just beats them. She's not even like, I can do it, I can handle it. It's just, oh no, I don't think it's so bad, whatever. What it is it's creating a scenario where she could win without even trying. She just sort of effortlessly defeats these young men at a hot wing eating contest because, ? It is effortless because they won't even put in any effort into their entirely shallow wish fulfillment movie. If I was an old woman, I would feel deeply pandered to. All I'm saying is the Pats were doing okay up until this movie came out. The next year they went 3-14 and Bill flies the coop. I blame this movie, but at least they won't dare make a sequel. I really don't mean to keep picking on you, Mr. Neeson, I swear. I like Marlowe, enough. Didn't make the top 10, but it was fun for one watch, But Retribution is an alleged action movie where he is just stuck behind the wheel of a car for the entire movie, who has to listen to the man over the phone who has a voice disorder like this. You must do as I say or the blah, 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 blah. The only thing that has any action in this movie is the fact that cars occasionally move. So you ever find out who is in the mysterious man? Well, if it was like this, what I say. Well, not to spoil anything, but maybe he winds up in the backseat of Neeson's car, and he's like, okay, now you have to do the other thing for me. And it's like, yeah, but you just played your hand way too early, and thus, now that you're in the car, he can do something, like, let's just say he just backs up into, like, something and crushes the back of his car and kills him that way or something. It's like, dog, what are you doing? Why did you do this before you had everything in place? Like, your whole plan just went kaput because you just wanted to do this one thing. It's like, what are you doing? And then he does something, and then our boy escapes, and victory and good things prevail, and he gets another paycheck. Woohoo! So last year I compared Blacklight to a Seagal movie, and, like, I don't think that Neeson is any more active in this one, but he's sitting down or whatever. He is trying with his acting things, but I have now since seen a Steven Seagal movie, and I need to retract that comparison right away, because the one I saw was absolutely execrable. And both Blacklight and Retribution are significantly more watchable than that. So it is a testament to how charismatic and fun Neeson is, so that he can make something at least slightly watchable, even when the movie, at the end of the day, if you're paying for it in a movie theater ticket, prices is still really bad. Now, this movie has a lot of elements in common with The Baker. I'm going to read directly from my notes, if it's all right. An older man with skills at killing and hurting people is contacted by his estranged child after they got themselves into the world of crime, and they must protect their granddaughter they have never met while they carry contraband. Am I crazy here? When you look into it, it looks like they have been made by, like, a similar production team. There's a lot of overlapping actors playing small and large parts. Joel David Moore is in both movies, not just Perlman, and there's another small actress who I don't remember her name, but a bigger part in the other one, in The Baker. She was like the detective or something. She's in a walk-on part here. It's weird. I think it's clear these things have been made at the same time. Maybe it's like a Uwe Boll situation where we made Blood Rain 3 and Blobberell at the same time. And I'm like, go for it, man. Make two movies. Like, you just have, like, hey, okay, bring up the funny actress. Here we go. We do this one thing. We do the funny take. I'm like, that's brilliant to me. I have no problems with that at all. So Ron Perlman is back in this movie as supporting role as Bobo. And the way they introduce him, you think that Bobo is going to be just the dumbest man, just one of these heavies who wouldn't even expect, maybe wouldn't even talk. But then when he's in charge of holding on to the kidnapped little girl, now again we have another parallel with a Baker, except that this is now acrimonious and non-familial. When they're together, Bobo starts talking about Shakespeare. He and the little girl have this connection, and it's actually really good. It's just like this. It's about as good as in the other one. Maybe, I don't want to say better, but it's at least more active in the sense that this little girl can actually talk. The middle of this movie is just unexpectedly sweet, but the rest of this movie just stinks out loud, and it makes you think that they just put it in the middle because they just didn't know what they had. They need to expand that out completely. But I guess that's not how you get Nicolas Cage in your movies. The thing is, all of a sudden you expand out Perlman's part. But maybe that's what happened with the Baker. They saw this, like, this works. Someone wrote it and did it while they were out there or something. I don't know. This is all supposition on my part. The Baker worked well within its limitations, but apparently whoever made the retirement plan just had no clue what they were shooting was going to look so hokey. There's a sequence where, like, Nicolas Cage and someone else are both hanging off one piece of rope from a balcony, and it's just so ridiculous and dumb looking and badly shot that I'm like, why did you even bother? This looks like it took a bit to do. So I'm like just don't do big elaborate stunts if you just don't have either the skill or the dough to pull it off. Dough, the Baker makes dough, ho ho, dough. This really feels like one of these direct to Redbox releases, which generally Nick Cage has not been indulging as quite as much as some of his contemporaries have. I legitimately just don't know how this one got into a movie theater. Maybe it was out of a complete drought of anything else to release. They keep calling it a hard drive, but it's like a USB drive. It's one of these bad boys, isn't it? So, like, was there no one on set who's like, that's not a hard drive, that's a flash drive? Were all the shots involving the flash drive done with a Splinter team? Does this one have a Splinter team? I don't know. I hope everyone out there enjoyed their time in the Cayman Islands, at least. At least one of the movies they worked out turned out good. You can't always say that when you work on these things. You can't always say that when you're working on one movie. Is Aquaman worse? Maybe. Is Ant-Man 3 worse? Not on your life. Shazam 2 is essentially DC's version of Thor 2, where villains we just do not give a crap about are brought in to stall for time until they attempt to make the matchup that we're actually looking for. This opening scene has, like, Shazam on a couch talking to what he thinks is a psychiatrist, but it turns out it's actually a pediatrician, because obviously, he transformed from a kid to an adult. But this scene just does not work if you think about the things that had to lead for this to happen. I mean, I don't know if pediatricians' offices normally have, like, a couch to lay down on if you just spill your guts or whatever, or why this guy would accept this adult to go in here and, hi, how you doing, whatever, sit down, do this, and start this up to set up the joke. And look, I'm the guy who's usually like, I don't want to be a stick in the mud for some of this stuff, but I am like, how did we get here? And then there's a joke where he pulls up a newspaper with his face on it, so he knows who he is, so he's like, was he just star chasing? He's like, oh cool, a superhero isn't my thing, I'm not going to kick him out. Yeah, go ahead and talk about this, I'll do the today's Wordle. So the ending of the first Shazam has that he ends up giving his 5 other friends superpowers, and it actually turns out to be kind of like a really good ending for that movie. It's like, yeah, cool, I don't know if it's in the comics or not. But the problem is it really doesn't help you make a sequel, because now we've got all these things happening, and for some reason there's this all or none rule in the sense that they all have to do the same thing, and I'm like, dog, you all got powers, like, come on. Maybe he's afraid of if someone goes out by themselves to get a power stolen or something, which happens to be what's going down, but that's sort of something silly to think about when they pretty sure that there's no other magic left in the world after the wizard died in the first one, but that appears to also not have stuck in this one either. But I just realized Jaimon Hunsu's on this list twice. I'm so sorry, man. Like, it was never about you. You were always great. So they have to invent a lot of teenage strife for the things. I want this, I want that, and I'm like, yo, I wouldn't care about this if you didn't have superpowers, and now that you do have superpowers, I don't care. If your superpowers are causing the problems in your life, maybe, but you seem to just be all fine doing your own thing or whatever, and Shazam has got to stick up his butt. He's like, we did have team meetings, whatever, and it's like all this other stuff. It's like, what is this? I mean, it could be the fact that it's like, well, he's a teenager, he doesn't know how to manage people or whatever. If one of them happened to like be a manager at a McDonald's and be like, wait a minute, this is how you deal with team whatever's. That could be something. I just don't get the angle on this except for stalling for time. Where it's like, here comes in Helen Mirren and Lucy Liu at her least interesting performance ever. And once they brought in, what the hell's her name? The girl from West Side Story in the future, Snow White. Once I was like, she's the third one, isn't she? I'm like, because otherwise you don't have what is now a big star popping in like this. Like, okay. So I'm like, I don't know why they look so completely different then, because they're all different ages, but they're meant to be sisters. So maybe their dad like waited a while, like got divorced or something. I don't know. Why did I hate this so much? It's kind of hard to say. I went and scrubbed through it, and thank God it's on Netflix. I scrubbed through it again to sort of look for stuff, to be like, what was this about? And not just that the ending is just this enormous like Dragon Ball Z fight. And it's not, when I say that, I don't mean to make it sound good. I make it sound just grinding and pointless. It was just this non-stop, do this, do that, boom, boom, boom. There's just too many players and too much things going on. And then the big final sacrifice, which gets undone by another character who I guess can now just bring people back from the dead. And maybe this would have been better if this scene was not shown in the commercials for the movie, but they've blown this character reveal so many times that it doesn't even matter anymore. Oh yeah, they do a Chekhov's gun with Skittles where someone puts Skittles in someone's pockets and they put it in the laundry and whatever, and it's like, alright, that's dumb. And then later, to stop a rampaging unicorn, they throw a bunch of Skittles at them. And I'm like, I don't care if this is product placement or not, this is stupid. I should say, the little girl, the little African-American girl, and her superhero counterpart, I like them both. I wish they were in a movie that was better than this. Also, Black Adam does not appear in this movie in any way, shape, or form. I guess he was holding back. So I am kind of like, what's the point of even doing Black Adam, a superhero movie that at least is better than this, but not really by a lot, where it's like, what's the point of doing this and then doing a second Shazam if you're not going to eventually have them fight? Obviously, the plans have changed and it's not going to happen no more, but it makes this whole thing just a vestigial tale. Maybe it's like the third Fantastic Beasts film or the third Divergent film where they just completely overreach and like, we can stretch this out a little bit, we'll have time to do the rest of this, won't we? And as the French say, les lol. No, you won't. So I guess when I saw this the first time, I didn't wait for the post-credit scene because I just didn't give a crap, I guess. And I'll remind you, DC didn't used to do post-credit scenes, but I guess now they're in the market of doing it, so that's a pain. This all started back in 2017 with the Whedonized Justice League, where they put the scenes on that, and it's like they just completely gave up trying to do things in a way that was different from Marvel, and now they're fighting over the same Earth and the same audience. It's like, no, just do your own thing, man. What are you doing here? And maybe it's not as easy for me to see a post-credit scene in my new career, but you know, maybe if I don't see it in the theater, I just miss it completely. But I'm also like, well, who gives a crap at this point? Sometimes I got another movie to see. If I got them timed the wrong way, it's like, I gotta go later. But I saw the scene on Netflix, and it is embarrassing. It looks like some kind of deleted scene they did on purpose, like the thing in It where the kid gets the boat out and the clown's like, oh no, whoops. You know, it looks like it's a joke. Two of the supporting characters from the Suicide Squad come in and they say, hey, do you want to join the Justice something else or whatever? And they do this whole thing. This scene is purposeless and drags on like the hyper-improvised nonsense that it is. I hope they drop these two out of continuity immediately when everything gets reset. What's that? Oh, one of them is played by James Gunn's wife? Well, you guys complained about them casting Sean Gunn as Calendar Man or whatever. Like, it's like, but Sean Gunn's really good. You're not going to complain about this? I had not seen that scene when I wrote the stuff about Guardians I said earlier, but I stand by what I said. This is a future fiasco in the making. So Fast 10 and Mario got some of my mercy because I could confidently say that they were not the worst racing movie and the worst video game movie that were released in 2023. Gran Turismo, an evidently excellent series of video games, has been mutated by Sony into a truly terrible, based on a true story, movie. Now that probably strikes you weird. You'd be like, how can a video game movie be based on a true story? This is evidently the true story of a kid who had an entire rig built up so that the excellent simulation in Gran Turismo was able to apply to really doing it in what was essentially a car simulation in itself. Now, they try to make it like the kid is all downtrodden. He has to get like a blue-collar job at one point from his father. But I'm like, that rig costs like thousands of dollars, doesn't it? So I'm like, I feel, look, we all spend money on the things that are important to us and the things that make us happy. But there's a certain point where like, hey, this led to him getting lots and lots of money. So, but I am kind of like, they kind of act like he's sort of underclass. I'm like, I don't necessarily know if I buy it. But like, if that's the one thing the movie got wrong, I would ignore it completely. As the story progresses, it clearly isn't actually telling this kid's story. It's telling the story of anyone who wants to be, oh, I want to be a racer, and I'm going to do this and whatever. It has the David Harbour part where he's the coach, and he's doing all these cliches. And it's not just that you know how every race is going to go, basically. It's that you know how every moment in every race is going to go. You know, he's going to be back at this part, and this is going to happen, and that guy's going to beat him this time. He's going to gloat about it. We do this, and it is punishing to get through. It's just not interesting on its own because it has all the failings of a based on a true story movie that isn't compelling on itself, but also one of a story that doesn't rise above its cliches. It is agonizing. And what is kind of sad is the second act downbeat of this is a real crash this kid suffered, where his car went out of control and flew through the air and killed someone. And I'm like, oh my, like this is this is something where it's like, I don't know if you want to put it in the movie. I think he wanted it to be in there in the sense of it's a real thing he has to deal with and probably will deal with for the rest of his life, the poor bastard. But I'm also just like, this is just sort of tawdry. The rest of this movie just having nothing in it of any value and then dragging this in, I'm just kind of like, this just seems grotesque. I would just rather a situation like this be expressed like a lot more straightforward than in this sort of Sony-branded commercialized sausage. This whole thing still handled better than the crash in Ferrari, at least, which was so silly. I don't know how people didn't burst out laughing every time they saw the way they decided to present this. It's as bad as, like, the death of Gwen Stacy in Amazing Spider-Man 2 was like, they really chose to do it this way. Like, why? It's the only way you could have done it which would evoke laughter. In the last moment, you want that. Ferrari is just kind of boring, but also, like, at the opening, there's all this old-timey race car footage with Adam Driver photoshopped in so badly that it looks like an episode of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And I'm like, why did you even bother? Like, just have this stuff going on, or just, like, you know, get, like, regular footage and then, like, downsample it to make all new stuff. Why you gotta do this? Why did you release it looking like this, Michael, man? What's your deal? Well, that's also not the worst thing Adam Driver did this year, so we'll be back to that in a second after these messages. Look, I didn't like the Mario movie, but it was at least clearly made by people who love Mario. The metaphor that Todd in the Shadow used this year for the Fast Car cover that was on there, he used the metaphor comparing that to the Watchmen movie by Zack Snyder, and he said, look, like, whether you like this movie or not, like, Zack Snyder clearly loves Watchmen, even if he doesn't understand it. And you can argue whether he does or not, but it's not possible to argue that Zack Snyder does not love Watchmen. The people who made the Mario movie love Mario. It's clear. Even if the movie is terrible, like, you don't make things like this, you don't make these references like this unless you have some understanding and that you love it. They just didn't know how to turn it into an actual story. In stark contrast, I do not believe the people who made this movie care about turtles in the least. Considering things like Leatherhead being recast as an Australian woman to have like 6 lines. And it's like, look, I don't mind making the cast more multicultural or more feminine. That's all fine. But it really just seems like they're just lobbing easy paydays at Seth Rogen's friends. And that's one thing. But then it's like, well, why do it this way? It's like, people be like, oh, well, they're just change things on purpose. Like, here's the thing, though. There are no alligators in Australia. Crocodiles, yes. No alligators. Now, in the 2003 show, Leatherhead was a crocodile, but he was also a pet that was flushed down the toilet or something like this. You know that whole story. But most of those that happen in America are not crocodiles. They're alligators, because alligators live in a greater part of America, and I think actually it might just be a little less vicious. I don't think there's actually, outside of earnest exotic pet stuff, that people have pet crocodiles. It's almost always an alligator. So it just seems like that was just a mistake. They just didn't know the difference between these two things. Like, crocodiles are only in very southern Florida in America. There isn't a market for baby crocodiles, as far as I'm aware. So it really just does seem like they just did not give a crap, did they? So yeah, making an alligator Australian makes no sense unless you were just trying to lob an easy part at your friend. And fine, whatever. At least, like, Rogen is good in the voice of Bebop, or whichever one. It is Bebop, isn't it? Yeah. But the turtles themselves have never been less interesting. Even the Bay versions of these turtles are more interesting. A lot of hay is made of the fact that they're actually played by teenagers now, which is fine because now I cannot tell any of their voices or any of their personalities apart. They are all just too similar. I praised Migration's younger cast earlier, but these 4 men, whoever they are, nothing about them seems to stand out for me in these voice roles. Maybe it's bad direction. Again, they're too young to be fully responsible for this, but I don't think any of them stand out at all or make any of these characters distinct or interesting in any way. They lead so hard into the teenage thing that all the mutants, I guess, are teenagers because the thing was developed like 15 years ago, so there can't be a mutant that's older than that, which, like, all right, I mean, not every villain has to be a mutant, but whatever. I don't think it was like that in the show. There were things from other planets and stuff, but that's another thing about, like, oversimplified Hollywood thinking is everything comes from the same source. It's the same way that, like, again, we're going to bring up Amazing Spider-Man 2 again, how everything came from the same place. Like, the Sinister Six were just 6 people who got technology from Oscorp, and it's like, that's really boring. They lean so hard into all the teenager stuff that they even make April a teenager, and I hate that. I hate making them peers. I want her to be an adult woman. I want them to be teenagers, because then you can't have the whole things about the romantic tension that were in the Bay movies and in here a lot worse. All the other stuff they did to April, the fact that she's African American, the fact that she's less conventionally attractive, none of that bothers me. In fact, the voice who does it, she does avail herself very well. She's apparently in like The Bear, one of the other shows. She's really good in this part. I just don't think it's a very good April. It's not the problem. If the only thing was that problem, I wouldn't really say nothing. But obviously, you know, Turtles' name's on the billboard, so if the Turtles are bad, then the movie's bad. One of the Turtles, I honestly forget which one, it's probably Leonardo, because that's usually the one they stick the stuff on. One of the Turtles, at first sight, falls in love with her, and it's like, no, movie, don't do that, because, again, you can either have her be conventionally attractive and doing the original one from the '89 cartoon, or you could have her be frumpy and unusual and interesting, which she is, and then have that maybe it's not as immediately obvious. Well, I mean, with the Turtles all having electronic devices right now anyway, I don't know why they would necessarily find her specifically attractive. The whole thing about them being attracted to human people is always still kind of weird, but also since they have, like, you know, social networks and stuff, like, I thought they would have a different perception of beauty anyway, like a normal one, and wouldn't necessarily be attracted to this one. I really just hate when they do this. I guess they can't look up pictures of mutant girl turtles, I guess, so maybe that's why they like women, but, I mean, why are they even so interested in going to the surface world if they have all this technology and they think that they can just experience it by beaming up and not being worried about getting killed up there or something? Like, maybe that's what, like, messes with their perception of beauty, and that's why they find human people attractive, I guess. I don't know. They even do the same plot line where they lock up the turtles and then they suck their mutagen out of their bodies. It's like we're literally getting all the worst part of every Turtles that's ever existed. It's unbelievable. And these turtles are even uglier than the Bay Turtles, as everything just smears around whatever, which probably would be a nice thing to just accent a couple of scenes, but it's everywhere and it's nauseating to look at, and it makes everything unbearable. But the kids like it. Shut up, all right? Shut the hell up. We don't give kids things based on what they like, all right? Kids do not know what they like. Kids like what you give them. And if you ever go back to one of the movies you liked when you were like 5 or 6, you watch it and you're like, oh my god, this is terrible, embarrassing. I'm sure someone has done that with like Mac and Me or one of these other whack movies from the 80s. It's just like, you didn't know, all right? It's fine, but this is why we don't give them based on what they want. You gotta make things that are decent, and this isn't decent. And the kids like this, who grew up with this movie, I hope eventually they exit Plato's sewers and actually experience something with some value. This is the worst thing to happen to Turtles since Guilengao. I often make note of this, but 65 is the worst science fiction movie of the year. I mean, how could it not be when it's number one? The creator was kind of a candidate, but like, when you compare these two things, even though I hated the creator, and I think it's fart-huffing garbage, and also a movie where the AI is the good guy being released in 2023, I think I covered this earlier in the thing, but I'm like, what are you doing? The one-sentence summary is that there is a humanoid alien that comes to Earth to rescue someone down there, but it turns out they didn't check their watch, and oh no, a giant asteroid is coming down there. It is gonna destroy all the dinosaurs and possibly himself. What unlucky timing! Whoppity-doppity-doop-doop! So the reason the guy takes it is back on his home planet, he has a sick girl, and he's like, I need the money to help pay for her whatever. And obviously, like, she dies on the other thing. I'm not doing any spoiler hats for any stuff. This movie is not worthy of my hat. Alright? But anyway, like, obviously she dies when she's gone because they apparently can still communicate faster than light. I'm not really sure how. But he finds out during the journey that she's gone. He's sad. But on the journey, they encounter an asteroid field, which is weird because he's, like, asleep. And it caused, like, this enormous catastrophe. And he crash lands on the planet. And one, I don't know why there's no co-pilot or anything or somebody else to watch it so you don't hit... If this is meant to be, I guess, the asteroid belt, you know, a thin belt of asteroids in 3 dimensions, like, go around it, go up. You're in a spaceship, you're allowed to do that. You can't do that in a taxi cab because there's a thing called gravity. But in space, you can just go up and down things. I'm like, how did you mess this up? There's, like, literally the Futurama gag where they make a ring of circle of people around the ship and it floated out like that way. It's literally that, except it's just like, oh, on our course there's these asteroids and they hit it. This is like worse than the ship and passengers. So after he crashes, he like takes 2 wires and touches them together underneath the dash of the ship, which puts the lights back on because apparently he can just hotwire it because he was crossing the galaxy in his 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air. He makes a note on the radio on something whether he says, yeah, we hit an uncharted asteroid belt. It's like, well, it was a really bad idea to be asleep then, wasn't it? And at the 70-minute mark it goes, 65 million years ago, a visitor crash landed on Earth. I was really expecting them to show on Earth and show that all the continents were in the same shape as they are now, because obviously they was like not in the exact same pattern that they were that long ago because of tectonic shifts and stuff. I expected them to be so dumb they were going to rip off an image from the Universal logo and have that just floating in the background somewhere, the big letters. You know, it has to be a very dark night, but if you look up there, you can see the Universal logo in the sky and be like, wow, it's amazing that that's just up there. And if that all falls, we're all dead, huh? So he starts his journey, he's got his gun, and he's trekking, and he steps on a bone, and the camera zooms out and pans and shows like this, like, you know, skeleton and ribcage of a dinosaur or something. But the thing is like, he's in a clearing. There's nothing obscuring that, so he's just not looking where he's going for like meters and meters of walking, and this finally steps on a bone before he just trips over this entire thing. Like, there's no reason for him to do this unless you were making a shot where you did not consider his placement of where he is, or that this was an actual environment. It's also right near this geyser that blows up and nearly blows his head off. This movie is filled with jump scares like that, like the geyser and the tiny chicken dinosaurs that run up and try to do him, that he just bashes to death, and then one of them just sort of latches up and goes like that, jumps up before it dies, whatever. This movie is just so cheap. He finds the girl, he's talking to her even though they don't speak the same language, and he says, there's something alien out there. I think you'll find that you... So to draw like a mountain so she knows what a mountain is, she just takes paprika, just polishes it all over this desk and draws a mountain in it, because apparently in space nobody can hear you dry erase. And then she goes up and draws a little stick figure. And I guess if they don't have the same language, they still draw stick figures the same way. Like, maybe that's universal, I'm not so sure. That one, maybe I'll give them that one. When I was first watching this movie, I thought this was longer than Oppenheimer, but it is a thin 92 minutes. I even forgot about the part in the middle where he's going through the slides of the daughter. Actually, she is just watching the daughter speak a language that she doesn't speak, talking about stuff and acting like an idiot. This actress has been in something else I saw that I think I liked. I don't remember. It's not her fault. So they're walking, and she's picking up berries and throwing them at Adam Driver for no adequately expressed reason. So he picks one up, and he has this little case with a jaw, like a hinge on it, like this, to put him in a box or something. I'm not certain why he does, but he also goes, "Don't eat," like that. And I'm like, if you did this to someone and then put a piece of food into this thing to someone who didn't speak your language, I would think they were saying, eat this. You know, oh, this is good, dead. There's this bug that's made entirely of boogers, and he slaps it, and it's all sticky, so he takes it and rubs his hand on this rotting tree because he just needed to make certain that his hand was even dirtier than it was before. I guess in the universe he comes from, there's no such thing as a poison animal. They save this little dinosaur from a bog, but then it's immediately eaten by other dinosaurs, and it's like, look, I guess none of this really matters because we know it's coming, but... And I guess it's like, hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. We must maintain character even in trying circumstances, but still it's kind of like, yeah, I guess, which way would you rather go, Dino? The bog or getting eaten? She finds a little pink flower, and she insists on putting it in his hair because he must be emasculated somehow, even though blue and pink are not like established colors for boys and girls right now in our world. God forbid 65 million years ago. He climbs the world's most rotten tree to go get a view of something he could likely see from at least ground level, or at least not that bad of a tree. And he tumbles down and hits every branch down the way down. And I guess not only is he then ugly, it's also he's dislocated his shoulder or something, which he then snaps back into place somehow before he has to fire some things. He tells the girl to run, and she runs and finds like a beach or something, which I don't know is how that's near this mountain that they're looking at or something. There is just no sense of space or anything that is shot in this movie. Like, she's over here somewhere, we have a cut back to him shooting those other dinos, she's now in trouble with a different set of dinos, and then he reappears at some point and then shoots them, except for one who starts dragging her off by the hood on her shirt, and he's like, where's this thing dragging her to? The dino kitchen? Like, what's the point of this? Except to have that he can then shoot her and save her. At the 45-minute mark, they're kind of in this like wet cave, and like, oh no, there's a giant asteroid coming. That was only part of the whole thing, which I don't know if the asteroid belt was meant to be something different to the one that the dinosaur killer came from. I don't know, but then it's in this wet cave, and the bug crawls in their mouth. They have to pull it out, and then they go push further into the cave by like the T-Rex-alike or whatever. And they have these little explosive things, and they're thinking, oh no, we're stuck back here, there's no way out, but they use the explosive thing to blow away through this cavern, which could easily have just brought the roof down on top of them, but didn't this time because whatever. And then our hero, Adam Driver, gets himself stuck in honest-to-God Tarzan-style quicksand. He's going, oh no, I'm slipping into this bog, whatever, pull up branch, whatever, oh, I'm fine. We got to keep moving because it's the 1 hour mark, and hey, that we now know that the asteroid is the one who killed his father. Or something. Now, that didn't happen, but it could have. They find the other half of the ship they're looking for, they climb in, and isn't that just the moment where they get pelted with micro-asteroids that knock it down, and they gotta be like, oh no, the thing's tipped over or something, we can't launch right yet, oh no, and look who's also around, is Mr. T-Rex alike, blah 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 blah. I guess I shall refrain from spoiling the very last thing that happens in the movie, but I will say that, like, the last move that's made on their last thing, that before they can either escape or not, is essentially a total coincidence. Now, it's one thing to use coincidence to get people into situations like this, and it's another thing to get them out of it, because if you get them out of situations with coincidence, it ruins all the fun and the stakes you could have with this sort of movie. 65 is absolutely pathetic. It thinks very highly of itself, but has far less credibility than any equal portion of Land of the Lost. And that's it. That's the entire list. Thank you for watching. Don't look at the rest of the runtime of the video or this joke that I stole from H-Bomber Guy. I mean, I think that's the trendy thing to do now, is to steal from him. Okay, let's make a quick adjustment to the list here. Let's see. I think I got it. There we go. All right, we got a new spot up there for number 1. No, the real worst thing from this year is one more horror released by Warner Brothers. A movie so bad you just wish you could run from it. And run and run and run so fast that you could start going back in time and somehow undo this tragedy that has befallen us all. Guys, The Flash is fine. The Flash is just fine. It's not that bad. It's kind of an interesting perspective as far as, like, the two Flashes that we have in the movie, as far as being kind of like, here's something like the Marvel movies would do, and here's something that the DC movies would currently do, and why some of it's good and some of it's bad. It's actually kind of an interesting commentary. Ezra Miller is at least compelling in both roles. Actually, he's pretty funny, despite everything else about that. He doesn't fail to be, diverting, at least. I don't really want anyone to come back, but if he did, at least he would probably still do an okay job. I mean, Flash is definitely better than Aquaman, but both of those movies had a hero that was sequestered away from the element that makes them powerful, getting released from these whack prisons, and then getting their power back and then joining the good guys. So I think someone was peeking at someone else's homework there. 65 was the worst movie of the year from the second I saw it in, like, March, all the way through, right up until the end of the year. And then I made the mistake of seeing something I'd missed on January 2nd, 2024, for this year. It still counts. Wonka just comes across like those horrible cookie-cutter stage musicals that were made out of movies that somehow crawled its way back into a movie theater. I make exceptions for some of them, like Waitress wasn't a movie that really made a huge impact, but then turning it into a play kind of gave it new life. But things like Legally Blonde, Matilda, The Grinch, Frozen, they have to tune that again. Like, that's one I guess I would see, but I'm also like, I don't want to encourage this crap. These musicals are made because there is pop culture capital to be sucked out of these movies and then put into a different form so you can charge people $80 a ticket where nobody will do a movie if you pay for that. Well, I say that, and then they had like that Taylor Swift and Beyonce festival something or other, a music thing they did. There is a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory musical, I think. I think before this whole trend really started, I think there was one of those. But the estate wouldn't let them use any of the songs from the 70s because apparently Roald didn't like that version of the movie because he's a poop head. So how can anyone possibly say that that movie is not the best thing to come out of literally anything he made? And I liked like the BFG and some other things. But come on now. I could find a spot for Wonka on the list somewhere based on those grounds alone, as far as movies being turned into musicals and then being turned back into movies. The way, like, if you, like, compress a WAV file and pull it out and then do this a bunch of time, you just lose all the data and it sounds like nothing eventually. I could probably find a spot for it on there alone as far as just being a garbage movie product. But that would leave untouched all the reasons why this movie completely sucks. This movie made me think back on the other fantasy-style movies that I've watched over the years. Like, Fantastic Beasts 3 is bad, but that's Batman Begins compared to this. I even think I liked Space Jam 2 more than this. And then, like, that, that was famously a worst movie of that year, although it was an abbreviated year. Maybe it would be bumped down to 2 or 3 if I saw something earlier. I think I do like Tom and Jerry less than that, and that was that year. I just didn't catch it because it was in March. So that might adjust that a little bit. And there was a couple of moments of Space Jam 2 I liked, but they just don't outweigh all the other terrible decisions and other bad things in that movie. Then I think of some of the other musicals which compare well to Wonka, and some of those were on worse lists of their own. Dear Evan Hansen at least feels like a musical, like something someone would write, or what an awkward kid like Evan Hansen might experience if that's what his life was like. The songs do reflect that. They were the two good songs that I liked in that one. But that movie still made the worst list because it was just so awkward. I've heard of people who can't even watch the Jenny Nicholson review of Evan Hansen because the clips they just show are so awkward they want to cringe themselves inside out. This year there was a musical called Journey to Bethlehem, which isn't good, but it was clearly made by, like a musician who was interested in making music that affirmed the beliefs and other things like this and told the story of Jesus in an interesting way. Look, it's not exactly Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, but there's a couple of songs I was like, all right, this is pretty all right, and at least they're doing fine singing jobs, because that's what they were focusing on. They're like, we want to make a musical like this. And like, yeah, sure, and they at least had the skills to I guess, pay it off. I don't remember any of the songs. I couldn't hum a single one, but at least they were sung with conviction. Did anyone else see Cyrano, the movie with Peter Dinklage as Cyrano? There's two songs in that one. There's like the one song that kind of goes through the whole movie, which is pretty good. And then there's like the sort of the rap patter one where he keeps listing the insults that people said to him as himself while he's sort of fighting the big buffoon at the start. That is great. That's a really fun one. Wonka doesn't have anything remotely as fun as that. I made fun of Lala Crocodile, and that movie sucks, but the music has kind of grown on me in some of them. There's a couple things that at least are, moving things along. I made fun of Rip Up the Recipe, but that song's better than anything in this movie, even if the actress, What's-Her-Face, apparently just can't sing for her life. She's so closed up like this, and man. But, you do what you gotta do. That's her only song in the movie. The day before I saw it, on the 1st of January, I watched Ferngully on my Fire Stick. So I was like, what the heck, let's do this. Let's test out this streaming service. I'm trying to see if I can see more movies from home. Every song in Ferngully is better than this one, including the bat rap that Robin Williams does. That's way better than anything of this. At least you remember it. Even if it was like audaciously bad, it would be better than how the songs are bad in Wonka. There are two good songs in Wonka, which is pretty good, but as you might imagine, they're the two they stole from the 1970s version. And you can probably guess which two they are. It's not Charlie's Mother's song that everyone fast forwards through if you're part of the Red Letter Media crew, I guess. I know diddly about music, but this difference in the quality, it's just immediate. Something to the ear that you can just pick it out. Even the songs in Wish were more memorable than this, and I don't remember them. I had to look them up on YouTube, be like, how did this one go? Doo-doo-doo. This is the problem with trying to make this like a musical. The guy who's playing him, he's not like a terrible singer, but he's not a great one. So it's one of these things where like asking him to try to carry these things with these songs that aren't any good is just not fair. And the songs don't have any poppy flair or any theatric bombast to make them stand out or at least get in your head. They're literally sung with the same skill as those songs you see in the colon cancer screening commercials. They're that bad. Maybe the music would feel more substantial if it wasn't just completely outshined by all this hideously overproduced production design. Why does the entire world look like this when the crucial thing about the 70s version was the fact that the factory was the only magical thing in the world? Everything in this whole world just seems odd and weird. And maybe just looking back on this sort of Dickensian London-esque sort of city. I don't know where this is supposed to take place. I have no clue. We've got people with Cockney accents, I guess, so maybe it's meant to be England. I'm not sure. This might also be why the dance numbers don't sort of stand out as being like anarchic and wild. It's just the fact that this already just sort of seems like a universe for a musical, and when they start dancing this not particularly elaborate dance stuff, it just comes off as awkward. There's one number where the villains are singing and tap dancing to each other and whatever, and this should work, and it doesn't. And it's not because I'm asking these guys to just go out and do it. I guess maybe if they really let loose and did some fancy stuff, I'd be like, maybe this would have saved it from the worst list entirely. If anything like this had that kind of care put into it, or at least had that much boldness. This is already a freakish world that obsesses over chocolate with its weird chocolate mafia. Wonka just wants to climb to the top of the mountain and be the king, the way the poverty-stricken Trump voters imagine themselves somehow being able to wrest some sort of wealth away from them, and for one moment being able to actually wear the boot that was on their face. Wonka is singularly obsessed with chocolate because his mother somehow gathered the ingredients to make one single chocolate bar with this secret recipe, and he must have the world know about it. Forget the fact that in the books and the movie, Wonka definitely made things that weren't chocolate, like, I don't know, gumdrops, or gobstoppers, or, white phosphorus grenades. I guess Warner Brothers couldn't stand the idea that he was making a candy that wouldn't exploit a tropical culture, but whatever. So Wonka has these unexplained sorcery powers that come up a couple times, but they don't get him out of his real trouble when he signs an ironclad contract with his people, and he's stuck in this thing because he wasn't able to read the contract because he can't read. He grew up with his mother on this riverboat until he was like 12, and that never came up. She just was like, nah, he doesn't need to read. Screw him. So Wonka just floats through this movie like a soap bubble, completely and utterly self-determined and already himself, which is a great lesson to have for real life. Fly your freak flag, do whatever you gotta do, but in this movie this makes him entirely static and boring. It would be one thing if this was just boring, but this movie's absolutely suffocated in all this forced whimsy, like a 54-year-old woman dancing on TikTok because that's what other people do, so we may as well try to do it too, and she just had no idea how else to possibly be heard by anyone. Wilder as Wonka never looked like he was trying to stand out or trying to not stand out either. He never made anything look like he was attempting it. It just looked like the habits and eccentricities of a very weird man. Every odd movement or decision that the Wilder Wonka would do seemed like something an eccentric man would do, not the stiff, clomping dance moves of a junior high school musical. Look, I can't dance. I was at one wedding, I tried dancing, I'm like, that was my move, I guess. So can you imagine how bad the dancing has to be in a movie for me to be like, the dancing in this movie is bad? Even stuff that should elevate this movie, like Hugh Grant as the movie's sole character Oompa Loompa. Well, one, they didn't do that because casting Hugh Grant as Oompa Loompa is audacious. I think they just did it because they wanted to work with Hugh Grant. Hugh Grant's reliable as what he does, and they just did not give a rat's ass in any other way. They're like, we can do this because someone has to be the Oompa Loompa. It might as well be someone we can put on the poster. There's really not that much of him in this movie. He appears at the hour mark, where he really should have been like the deuteragonist of the whole thing, but it's just sort of this thing that sort of comes in and out, pops in occasionally. It's very tertiary to the movie. And second off, he's like really small. He's like 14 inches high. He's like itty bitty. The other ones are obviously the size of shorter men, but this one is like miniature to like the size of a cat. And I'm like, I don't know why you did that. The only reason I can figure that they made him that small is because then they wouldn't necessarily have to hire someone with a height disability to actually play the Oompa Loompas. Maybe they don't want to do it, but I don't think every single little person actor feels that way. I'm sure some of them would love to have the opportunity. I'm sure some of them can sing and dance. So it's like, maybe they just did that to be like, well, we can't take one of those. We're just going to take Hugh Grant's head and put it on a little miniature, like, child body kind of thing. And we can't do that with an actor with a height disability, so whatever. Peter Dinklage says we're not supposed to use the D word anymore. We're supposed to use little people, but that sounds so condescending. Maybe saying person with a height disability isn't better either, but I'm trying. I swear to God, I'm trying. So some hay is made of the girl who's essentially the deuteragonist of the movie, and she has a little Spaceballs amulet with a single letter on it that isn't the last name of anybody in the movie, so we're kind of like, this is interesting. But then it reveals that she might be the result of a relation because of one of the family members of one of the other bad guys in this whole thing, because apparently they took one of the names from the original movie, and now it's an enemy of Wonka rather than a person's working for him, because apparently they wanted to be the opposite of Pan, where it was Pan and Hook working together and being, hey, we're friends at the end. They fly away at the end. What could possibly separate us, Hook? And it's like they want to do the opposite of that, and like that was extremely tedious at the time. This is just as bad. It's just a name taken in because they're like, we need some other names that sound like a Roald Dahl character. How about Sloobadooba? It's like, no. How about Netflix? What if that was one of them? It's like all of a sudden you read one and there's an old Roald Dahl thing and it says, Dr. Netflix. Be like, huh? It's the way they had in Johnny Mnemonic, they had the iPhone, which was the thing you went over your head when it's like when you don't need roads, one of those things. It's pretty funny. Oh, where the hell was I? But we get the reveal that the amulet that had an N on it is not actually an N, it's a Z. But no characters have a Z in their last name, but the first name of the brother of one of the bad guys was Z something, so that's apparently the connection to them, and I'm just like, what the hell kind of storytelling is this? And in 2023, are we just sort of done with fat shaming as far as that we can just make fun of a bad character becoming enormously obese on chocolate? Personally, I found the procedure to be a lot more fun with savory and fried foods, but that's just me. A guy gets bribed with chocolate so much that he gets so fat that he can't get out of his car. That's literally a joke from Paradise PD. So apparently the secret ingredient in the chocolate was not just corn syrup, but it was also parasitic worms to invoke lymphatic filariasis. Wonka in the original movie is such a weird loner that making the movie about him finding friends seems about as accurate as making the movie about exercise. I can't wait to find out what reasons all these relationships break down acrimoniously. Now, don't tell me that wouldn't be a great movie. That's your movie right there. You have it that he's working with a bunch of other people, and people splinter off in like a Joker-like, extremely sad tale of business and betrayal and things like that. Like, I don't think they would have made a good movie doing that, but you cannot tell me you don't think that is more interesting than the crap that we got. But there is one moment where Timothy Sallyforth, whatever the hell his name is, actually earnestly reminded me of the original Wonka. Perhaps he has someone is experiencing the side effects of his chocolate. I won't say exactly what goes down, but something out of the ordinary. And he says, don't worry, it'll wear off. Probably. That mercurial attitude, that sort of caprice to the effects of his wares, what they have on other people, that is essential to the spirit of the original Wonka. We needed way more of that. And evidently, the filmmakers who did this, or Warner Brothers, just did not know the real thing when they had it. Like a stupid American going and complaining about chocolate from Switzerland or something because all they've had is the American stuff. They've turned this Wonka into Steve Jobs, an unflappable and entirely immovable and inert genius. Because that's what dimwits like to picture themselves as, and that's what children like to think that they will become. This Wonka will never be the Wonka in the 70s, not because we're attached to it with nostalgia, but because there is simply no road between these two. This Wonka in this stupid movie will either get taken down before he's 30 for fraud, or he will die of a preventable disease because he thinks he knows better than doctors. Warner Brothers is taking something sweet and universally beloved, despite a little bit of bitterness, and they've made it so expensive and obnoxious and cloyingly saccharine that we don't even recognize it anymore. Thank you all for watching. Now that I've done ripping on a Wonka for over 15 minutes, it's time for me to do some laundry. Let's just go ahead and... Boom, bop, bop, boom, bop, boom, bop, bop, bop.
Squinkle, linko, donkety does. I do not know why there is two of us. Squinkle, linko, rabbly lunk. I do not know how to make this rhyme. What do you get when you fall down the stairs? There's still lessons to learn here.
Okay, so spoilers for Dream Scenario. If you do intend on seeing it, I think you should see it without knowing one thing about it, because I think a lot of movies benefit from that, except for maybe you can hear like a one-sentence synopsis and you'd be fine, but I think coming into this one totally blind is better. So Dream Scenario is about a world where one unassuming man begins appearing in thousands of people's dreams. People finally start to connect the dots and they see pictures of the real person who's by no means a public figure, but becomes one and goes viral. But then as the celebrity starts to take shape, whatever, the dreams turn dark and he becomes a pariah. So the second act is mostly about his society sort of turning completely on him and they don't want to be around, people getting freaked out by him and acting essentially completely irrationally about this, since obviously he's not the real person doing it. I totally get when someone has a scary dream about someone, as far as okay, you can't sit there and have dinner with them. But there's also a thing was just lie and make him an excuse. Don't sit there and sweat about it and then freak and make it this guy's problem. It's he's not actually the one doing it, right? And I think the script was written before the pandemic, because nowadays you could just wear a mask and then you probably wouldn't get recognized. I mean, also things that have developed during the pandemic means you could just go home, and there's a certain point where if that happened to me, I would just be like, all right, I guess I'm staying home. Screw this, basically. Even if it is my right to do certain things, I might still go to the movies if I could. That'd be the one thing that'd be tough to give up. But I also gave it up for 12 months during the pandemic, so it wouldn't be that big of a deal. So it's not that he's not being a little irrational, but there's also a point where, yeah, these people are being very silly about this whole thing. So then we have this huge crescendo of this whole event, and then we immediately cut to a bunch of like Zennials talking about like this product you put in your head that can get you to go into other people's dreams, where you do like dream streaming TikTok-y kind of things. And I'm like, oh my god, movie, this is where we were building up to? Like, it's never explained like the mechanism of it, because it doesn't matter. But Cage's life has continued, you know, in a reasonable fashion, hence this. And he's become sort of a minor celebrity and kind of has to lean into it to, you know, I guess, I don't know about pay the bills, but he definitely can't do his teaching job no more or whatever, so it really doesn't seem like a very satisfying ending for these things. And I know it's not even one that seems like it's meant to be unsatisfying. It's more just like, we just didn't know where else to go with this thing. So the script was allegedly originally meant for Adam Sandler. If you're going to tell me that a movie about people being sick of seeing Adam Sandler in things, that seems to make a little more sense. Not that Nick Cage is bad at all in this performance. You know, he always puts his entire ass into everything, which is, you know, great. And it is a very good performance. But I do see it working a little more with him than in this way. Not that it's bad in this way. But I do think the script just kind of doesn't have enough gas to get all the way through. I was really enjoying this, even when the movie was infuriating me with how illogical the people were being. I was still enjoying it until the reveal of this product thing. I'm like, this is the finale of this? Are you for real? But the thing is, though, this movie is also based on a bullcrap marketing campaign that someone made up. The fact that they were like, oh, hey, these people are appearing in a bunch of other people's dreams, but you kind of had to know, like, in the real world, that can't happen. So you're like, oh, someone must be lying about this stuff, you know. If anyone actually fell for that one in real life, I really do not know what to tell you, because there is simply no way that could happen without external stimuli. Maybe people started dreaming about Jake from State Farm after that because he really bakes my potato. But, like, that's not the point, is it? It's fine for a movie, and I think taking something like this and sort of re-artifying it by taking it out of the clutches of the cynical marketing campaign is kind of nice. But also, if anyone actually fell for this when it was a marketing campaign, you might want to research not being an idiot. But what does this movie reveal about the world? That most people do not act rationally? That a man like this, if presented with consequence-free sex, will mess it up and then possibly upturn his entire life? That the scrutiny of the world will turn any dream into a nightmare? I mean, those are true, but I think most people understand that at this point, right? Again, I liked the first half of the movie for how odd it was, as far as what would be the actual response to this odd situation. But when it got to the end, and there really wasn't like a grander point being demonstrated about like the way people might react to something like this, I just kind of felt empty. Like this movie just did not have a real ending. This is the closest that a movie has gotten to being on both lists at the same time since Birdman. But we can at least take comfort in the fact that all this dream connection crap is not real. And thank God. If I had any balls at all, this would be the shirt I would wear for the worst list. I don't normally wear white shirts during these things, so I like to stand up from the background, but nevertheless. I don't even like this shirt. I bought this shirt because it was the only 2XL shirt he was offering at the time, because I wanted to support him, because in June 2020, his family business was destroyed in the civil unrest riots that had happened at that time. He even went on Twitter or whatever, and he was like, yeah, this whole thing sucks, but I mean, I'm not here to take away from what these people are feeling or whatever. And it honestly seemed like a really good thing to say. And this thing, I would be a lot less reasonable if someone destroyed something I owned for this sort of thing, you know? And that's what makes this whole thing just so painful. I literally told this man to his face that he had a heart of gold. I could deal with this so much easier if it wasn't for the fact that the internet is just populated with thousands, possibly millions of people who will just take, when they experience negative energy like this, or they get bad news, and they will just make it someone else's problem. They will go out there and they will vote bomb, and they'll make nasty things, and they'll say things on the pages like, we know what you did. Do you guys remember Far From Home, when that's what one of the Hannibal Buress said to Spider-Man? And if you remember that movie, No, that man had been deceived by the tricky whatever. It's like this, I don't know if that's happening in this case or not, but the fact is, like, hey, if someone just told you something, maybe you don't know, or maybe you don't know at least enough that maybe you just don't go on these things and bother people. Or maybe just don't do that anyway, even if someone does deserve it. Maybe we can just start treating people better than they deserve. Maybe I just want to start getting my bad news from a place that just doesn't seem so bloody pleased to be reporting on it, where they just roll around in it and just love it. And I'm like, how can you possibly be getting any energy out of this? It takes me so much energy just to process this, to get it out of my body so I can just sleep. How can you find this entertaining? How can you find this ennobling or interesting? How is this what you want to pursue? How is this the thing you want to do? It was kind of a joke last year where I wore an Irate Gamer shirt for the Worthless, and it's like, Teehee, the Irate Gamer, man, I don't watch the Irate Gamer. I did buy a shirt from him, but really, what's the Irate Gamer ever done to anybody but be oblivious and suck? If you made a better quality shirt, I would probably still be wearing that, but it's a really blobby print. It's really bad, so that's really the only reason I don't wear it. I don't care if I walk around with an Ira Gamer shirt. $25 on eBay, shipped. Kind of a fluke purchase. I think I purchased this right before the first response video but maybe even including this is my own form of dunking. But I was there when the whole thing of their inclusion in, the H Bomber Guy video thing, what they talked about there, when that thing first broke, I was there for that. And you know what I did, sports fans? I unfollowed her and never bothered her again. I didn't bother the stranger and her dog or nothing, because that's just not how I do things. Would it be possible maybe that if we just treat strangers and other people better than they deserve? Is that possible? Remember this? This was 6 months ago. I think it was in late June this whole thing went down. Doesn't feel like 6 months ago, does it? Holy crap. I also wanted to get the gray one so it looks like the one the guy used, but they sent me the wired one. It looks like this. This is a crappy controller, by the way. My entire thumb fits in between all 4 buttons. What are you doing, Logitech? I've since also moved up to triple X's for the most part because I just intend on getting fatter. No, but honestly, sometimes they're cut better and they feel better. Sometimes the sleeves can be a little funny on a 2XL. I don't know. I was at my local game store and they had like a t-shirt with the store name on it, and they only went up to XL. Maybe they were out of 2XLs. And I said, I wish you had a 2XL, maybe even a 3. I might be buying 3s lately. And the proprietor of the store was like, it's not supposed to go that. I know that's not supposed to go that way, all right? I know it's supposed to go down. It's not the way it's worked out, all right, my man? I was going to buy a Corona plush to be the alternate for this one, but those were over $100, so I probably shouldn't have even bought this one, but I wanted to get them before they all disappeared in case there was some kind of rush in them or in case they all just vanished. But ain't that the rub? Corona is a fictional character. There's no way she can disappoint us because it's all fake. And yet, when you have these garbage pail kids who, a message or go on the channel and are part of this little army that they want to be part of, how many of them do you think were also the ones who were bothering the actresses in film, TV, or movies, of the ones I can think of examples of, bothering the actresses who were playing a fictional character in here, just to vent those negative feelings that a fictional character caused you to experience? What do you think the Venn diagram is there? Do you think it's a circle, or do you think it's just a very highly covered? The people who simply lack that kind of control, who simply will not keep an emotion bottled in because their emotional cup is just too small. It runneth over and it's going to be smeared everywhere to be someone else's problem. $8 today from Walgreens. I saw him, and I was like, he's coming home. If you can't read him from here.
This kind of crap is what I'm talking about. The people who turn everything into a negative campaign ad, essentially. It's not what I call progress. It would bring that part of culture into the rest of the world. Even if it's right, even if it's true, just presenting anything with this sort of like manipulative whatever is just not what I'd call progress. Doesn't seem to be getting that guy that many views, but there's one of them channels that's all AI now or something. I don't know. Oh, that'd be a bummer.
Where's my soda? That's empty, damn it! I'm bereft of soda. I'll simply have to... Oh, golly, I'll simply perished. I think that's a Guy Ritchie movie anyway. I don't actually remember. Check that in the edit. Me, because I'm the only one who does these things. I need to stop drinking beer when I'm doing this. I'm so toasted. Look at me. Golly. First of all, Ben Affleck gets to go on the best list twice. Switch. I was going to take that up. It's still full of stuff. Hold on. So yeah, Illumination can do good work when they feel they need to. So why is Sonic such a hunk of crap? Not Sonic, damn it. Did I say Sonic first time? It all reminds me of the Leonardo DiCaprio emote where he's pointing at the TV. I can't quite point right now because, geez, look at my hand. And you just think of the financial... Ugh. My feet are tired. Had to walk to Subway for lunch. I suppose I didn't have to. So it put a gun to my head and made me eat Subway. I mean, if all the Subways in the world disappeared, I would just be like, whatever. I guess I'll eat more Burger King. Not that I eat Burger King that much either. If they didn't have chicken fries or the Angry Whopper, I'd be like, later, Burger King. Your fries are the worst. I'm burping. I know a little help. I'll drink more soda. They lean so hard into the teenager stuff that they also make April. If everyone just keeps doing this, eventually it's going to rain, I guess. So some hay is made of the girl who's essentially the deuteragonist of the movie. And she has a little Space Jam. $8. Oops. He was very delicate.
You are totally not wearing the same thing in those shots. You caught me, McGonagall.